you lead us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. You must have heard I was going to run the meeting today.
Yeah, it's a full house.
Yeah, I see that. And it's just a panic. Okay. That was number 2. 3, awards, recognitions, and celebrations.
Well, we would like to welcome everybody who's joining us in at home. We recognize after last night and talking with some people, there's a growing number of people who do participate and watch the meetings online. So welcome to those of you that are watching at home. Our celebration for tonight is pretty impressive. I'm going to pass this press release from the Michigan Department of Education that came just this past week. And Swartz Creek Community Schools was awarded the honor roll for Michigan school districts for AP. There are 21 school districts in the state of Michigan that have been awarded that honor. If you turn it over on the back side, you'll see those school districts. And you'll notice that some of the very finest school districts in Michigan are awarded this award. And essentially what that means is our students, we have increased the number of kids that have been able to take AP classes while also increasing the number of students that earn a 3 or better on the AP exam, which is an impressive feat. And so we are one of 21 schools in the entire state of Michigan to earn the recognition, and something that is quite something to celebrate. So very proud of our high school teachers and those that have done this. This is actually the second year in a row. We're one of the few districts that have been able to earn it 2 years in a row, which is rare. So we're proud of that.
Thanks, Ben. Any other awards, recognitions, celebrations?
Nope, that's it for me.
Consent agenda. I'd like to, we need a motion for the consent agenda for A, B, C. Any questions on anything there on the agenda?
Support.
Mike?
Support.
And Stacy, does a support.
I do have one question.
Yes.
The issue we talked about, that I talked about last night, are we going to talk about that in closed session? Do we need to amend the, do we need to amend 12?
No, we can't do that. We'll have to talk about it in open session.
Okay.
And then I think we can...
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Joan sent an email today from Brad
Banasic?
Banasic.
Yep.
I have it here.
Mm-hmm.
He says we can go into closed session to discuss security plans and procedures.
Okay. All right. What we would want
I thought
to do,
maybe you called him.
I didn't know, but what we would want to do is we would want to, for number 12, add a section for discussing emergency plans and safety procedures.
Okay, so we got an amended agenda. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 5, superintendent report.
Appreciate the turnout from yesterday at our meeting. I think the facility meeting was great. I know we're going to talk about that a little later tonight. One of the things that has come up several times, I've had ABC 12, NBC 25 both come out and want to do stories on this. School districts all over the country are facing very similar situations where they're facing threats. I know in talking with Mr. Engel the other day, they're dealing with it all over the county. One of the things that I think is going to be important is that parents, students, anyone who is made aware of a threat is very, very diligent about reporting that to a trusted adult, whether that's a teacher, whether that's an administrator, if it's a police officer, if they need to call it in. We need to get that information as soon as possible so that we can go through our protocols, and we have to treat every threat as though it's credible until it's not, and we're not going to take chances on that. So our parents have seen a couple emails that I've sent out about that effect. I know that the board has seen that as well, and so that's been something that's been very consuming over the last few weeks and difficult for schools all over. And certainly very challenging times for the residents and the families in Florida. Just a horrible tragedy. And so we're hopeful that we as a school district are going to do everything we can to try and prepare and prevent anything like that from happening here. But we need people to be using common sense, be aware, and diligent in what they hear. We have had quite a bit of time over the last few weeks spent in negotiations with our teachers group, and we're excited to talk about that a little bit in closed session tonight. Another thing to report, at the middle school we have our Reaching Higher program, which is starting to take off. Our high school is looking at launching their second cohort of the year in just a few weeks, so we're excited about that opportunity. I'll let building subcommittee reports give a little bit of an update, but our early learning center, really it's the demolition has really commenced, and that's been taking place. There has been a little bit of a, we got into a couple issues there that we didn't realize. There's some asbestos that had to be abated. A couple things with the roof. And where the roof lines come in, that once things were removed, we were able to see the way that the building was supported. It's actually had a couple additions over the years. So even though it's a square, or a rectangle rather, it's had some different renovations over time. So the architects have been working on how to support the structure of the roof and things like that. The last thing to update the board on and just make you aware of is that this week on Friday, we have 8 candidates coming in for interviews for Joan's position, so for our superintendent secretary position, and it's going to be hard to see Joan not around this place, but she's still got another board meeting, so she'll be here for that. But we're interviewing candidates on Friday, and a reminder for those of you that can attend, 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock next week on Monday. It's just kind of a drop-in. It'll be in the PAC lobby. Anyone who is available to come give Joan their well wishes and just kind of celebrate her retirement. Joan was pretty adamant that she wanted something low-key, so we've tried to make it as low-key as possible. And 3 to 6 o'clock in the PAC lobby, we're going to have a little celebration for Joan. And it's not, you don't have to stay for the whole time. It's just drop in when you can.
It's Monday the what?
March 5th.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any thoughts, discussion, comments on Mr. Micus?
Just the one thing I'd like to reinforce is in reference to the school threats. Yes, the prosecutor's office last week had nine different complaints come over, and I know one of mine was issued, and they issued a 20-year felony for a terrorism threat. I think it's very simple. If you use the word bomb, gun, kill in school in the same sentence, you're going to get investigated. If your kids talk to someone else on social media about it, even though if they're talking about what someone else said, you're going to get investigated. And I can't say how all the other resource officers handle things around the county. I know a bunch of us. We take phones and computers sometimes to maybe get a warrant later, and maybe sometimes to make a point to investigate an inconvenience. You just can't say it. And I don't know how to get that through to the student body, but if there's anything parents want to tell their kids, is you cannot put some of those words in a sentence because you're going to get a red flag. So, anyhow, just a thought.
No, thank you.
And kind of on top of that, after Friday's, no, it wasn't Friday, it was Monday. I got phone calls Monday late at night, and it was hysteria, and we'd already handled it. But it was the social media hysteria that kept this monster lurking in the backgrounds and
But-
scaring children, our
It
students.
was.
But to be fair to that, nobody out there knew it.
Well,
It hadn't been put out by the district.
yeah, I'm
And that
not sure
was-
when those emails went out.
Right.
Yeah, and we had a minor glitch in our technology, and I sent it at 8:30, but it didn't get out there till about 9:30. So
Okay.
yeah,
It did, but I mean, you know, and that was one of the things after I got my third phone call, I called Ben, and God love him, he's driving home with his family on a trip, and I said, I don't know what you have to do or who has to do it, but I said, someone's gotta put something out there, cause he's telling me everything we've done,
Yeah,
but nobody knew it.
right.
So it doesn't really matter what you know or what you've done until you've convinced the public that, hey, look, we've done this, this, and this, it's fine, send your kids to school.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you watch the Facebook page, as soon as that letter got up, I got mine, okay, thanks, great, yep, I've read it. It went from negative to very positive in a matter of minutes. So, you know, we have a duty to keep these people informed, whether we like it or not.
So social media is a good thing, but you can also
It is.
act in the other way.
It's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
Yep,
So,
I agree.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was close to 11 o'clock when I contacted you that night.
It can help you and it can kill
anytime.
you.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the people, the public that was there last night was because of what's been going on, and I think the meeting went excellent.
It
I
turned
thought,
positive for sure. It did.
and I thought the comments from the people, you know, safety was the biggest issue, but talking about facilities and things for, you know, the visions that we have, I think that was a very, very positive meeting. I appreciate all that you do, Tom.
Oh, thank you.
Any other comments, questions for Dan? Board subcommittee reports. Let me just be curious first, because it's kind of hard to read. She had the academic, and that was on February 12th at 7:30 a.m. And her comment is, the committee met and reviewed information presented on proposed new high school course and values excellence presentation for middle school staff.
Was that courses or chorus?
Courses.
Courses.
So, Mr. Heatherty, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, we have some new ITC courses that are going in that would kind of create a tiered system so that students aren't just thrown into running the technology, but first learn how to run the technology, what's involved, and later advance to those that are actually doing the producing. So kind of a tiered system to go from how to operate everything to how to actually run and produce everything. And then there were some cultural studies in ELA, looking at different cultures and those books that would go with those cultures, and that would be a semester class. And looking to add AP German, so another AP class. We think we have the ability to take and put together a high-level German class, so we're pretty excited about that.
We have a phenomenal German teacher, and she has really generated a lot of interest amongst the students, and she's gotten a lot of our students to an extremely high level, and so they're ready for that final step.
Cool.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Etherington? Mr. Ahern, finance report?
Okay. Finance Committee met on Monday. Under old business, we were informed by Stacy that the checks, the $1.3 million refunds for the healthcare checks were mailed out last Friday to our employees. And thanks to Stacy and her staff for getting that money distributed. Stacy explained to us the monthly bank reconciliation process, which she conducts now each month. It's similar to what we do with our checking account and our savings account, but much more detailed. This is an important process that helps identify any unusual transactions that might be caused by fraud or accounting errors. We reviewed check register from January 19th to February 21st, which covered a general fund checks numbers 263571 to 263697. There were no building and site checks. There were CDC checks, 3 of them, 6886 to 6888. We had discussion on 2 of the checks this month. One was the game officials checks, which we didn't think we were going to be seeing any after January 1st, but they're just checks that are left over from 2017 and during the transition period. We're going to a third-party payee, arbiters pay, and those probably are the last of those that we will see. I brought up and we discussed the GISD check number 263628, which is for $123,000. $97,000 of that is for special ed and skills center transportation, and the remainder is for GenNet. We were wondering, I was wondering if we could save money by, up until 2016, we had the transportation, we had those runs, and that was switched and the runs were changed to GISD. I don't know if it was by coincidence or what, but Stacy already has a meeting set up with RC Hunt and some others, and they're already looking into that to see if we can save money, and maybe also it would be an incentive for our bus drivers, and maybe we could retain more of our bus drivers if they had a few more runs added to their record runs. And we'll keep you updated on that issue. There were 127 checks written with no voids. The year-to-date budget status as of the 31st of January, we spent 49.60%. We are now in the second half of the budget year. The budget looks to be in fine shape. There are no pendings out at this time, as Ben mentioned. The demolition quote for the Morris Road CDC building was awarded to Morgan Construction, and it was just under $20,000. There are no other bids out at this time. There's no other bids out for the remodeling at the CDC building, and that won't happen until the state approves our GSRP application. All that paperwork is in, and we're just in the holding pattern until we hear from from the state. There were no public comments. Tony brought up an issue about vending machines at the cage. Genesee Vending has machines at the cage, and we receive 30% of those sales. Tony had been informed that Chartwell had placed at least a vending machine in there, and Stacy is investigating that. I will report that it's not what we thought it was. It was approved by Dave Szymanczyk, and it was at the request of the pickleball people, maybe some others. And Stacy is looking into it to see if there's an exclusionary clause in Genesee Vending's.
It really came down to Dr. Pepper.
Pardon?
Came down to Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, Dr. Pepper and 7-Up. So it isn't as big an issue as it looked like it was, but it is being looked into. We adjourned at, the next meeting is March 5th, which is next Monday. We adjourned at 9 a.m. Any questions?
Two things. The first one's a comment. We might have to go like TJ and TP. We can't just do Tony. And I'm not trying to give these gentlemen nicknames, but you know.
But when there's two brides, it's
Well,
BM.
if you remember, hey, remember at the city we had a TP and a TJ.
Yes, we did.
So that was where it wasn't like I made this up. And then the other is probably more of a comment for Stacy than to you, or a question. When you look at those bus runs, are they going to be creating more bus runs as those runs can go simultaneously with our other bus runs, or are they going to go after or before our current bus runs? So basically what I'm asking is, are we going to need more bus drivers and more buses, or are we going to use our bus drivers because those runs are later or earlier?
That's what we're meeting about, really, but some of them will be in the middle of the day, so hopefully we'll be able to provide our current bus drivers with more runs if they opt to choose to make more money with more runs. Specifically the GCI, hopefully will be in the middle of the runs, so they can pick up those
They should be, because
The
they go,
skills, the skill center one?
sure, yeah, because they go before school and then they go during school, so those would be, but when you say ISD runs, are you talking about just those, or ISDs where you're transporting special ed kids?
We're talking about both, really. We're in a tier 3 plan with the ISD right now, and they're also talking about increasing those tier 3 prices. So that's what Derek Bouchon, RC, and I have a meeting in March to sit down and calculate what it's costing us now, what our costs are going to increase, and can we save money by bringing it back in-house.
Well, I'd be curious, because a lot of those are gonna go at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
So we may have to find more bus drivers.
And more buses.
RC thinks we have enough buses, and Derek thinks we probably have enough buses currently right now, but we would probably have to find more bus drivers, which is a task. So, we're just starting to talk
Right.
about it, and we're just starting to look at it and get the logistics and find out what would we actually need to bring it back in house, and is it a cost savings for the district to do that?
The ISD has done, to give you a little bit more background on that, the ISD has done this tier 3 transportation, which is when we have a student that needs to be transported for whatever reason. A lot of times there's students that have disabilities. The ISD is running these runs, and it's extremely costly, but they've now just increased the price yet again. So a lot of districts are, looking at that, and they're saying, Grand Blanc, for example, who utilizes it at very high levels, the cost to them is exorbitant, and so they're saying, maybe we need to go back and rethink. So a lot of districts in the county are looking at moving away from that type of system and seeing, can we absorb it and bring in our own drivers to pick up those extra runs.
Don't get me wrong, I love moving away from the ISD.
There's one thing.
I won't hide it.
There is one thing, we're losing special education transportation revenue that we get from the state when we have special education transportation expenses. Right now, the GISD is claiming all of that, and they get all of that revenue, and it's not allocated all to tier 3, which is what we are participating in. So we don't see any of that revenue. So even if we can get the expenses to about the same of what we would have to pay the ISD, it would be beneficial for us to bring it back in, because then we can claim the expenses with the state and bring in that revenue on our state aid that we're not currently getting right now.
Well, I'm all for taking anything away from the ISD.
Aren't we paying our bus drivers by the run and not the hour?
Yes.
That, it's gonna be an incentive for our bus drivers that after they make their regular runs.
Right.
That's an incentive.
The only
If
runs
they
they'll,
get 2 or 3 more runs a day.
right, the only runs they'll pick up though are the skill center runs. The other runs are gonna run simultaneously, and you're gonna probably have to have more buses and
Well,
drivers.
I think we had 3 skill center runs. So
You do.
that's 3 more runs for
You
us.
do. You'd actually, yeah, you'd have one, and then the other one would be a pickup and a drop, and then the next one would be a pickup and a drop. So yeah, you're creating more incentive during the day, but the one that concerned me is the ones in the morning and the afternoons that are running simultaneous with all of our other transportation. Yeah, we'll wait and see. Good luck.
I appreciate your diligence in looking at these things, Mike and Stacy. If we could save money and opportunity. Any other questions, finance? Okay. Mr. Tony Paul.
Building site also met Monday, but we met at 9 after finance. Demolition has started on the CDC, like Mike had mentioned. They're about 4 to 5 days out to finish. And the demolition was under the threshold for bid, so we were able to just do it.
Excellent.
And like we had mentioned before, we're repurposing equipment from the district to the CDC to keep the cost down. We're moving playground equipment and equipment out of Mary Crapo. And we are still pursuing construction management, E&L. And they're going to do it at a 1.5% cost to the district, which is extremely low.
Yeah, they're helping us out in a big way on that. So it's helpful to have somebody to be able to facilitate the bid process, so that when we bring things to you to vote on, they will have vetted them and gone through the hard work of finding the contractors for those jobs.
And I think a big one was RC took initiative through consumers and put in LED lights. You mentioned it last night at the cage. And at no cost to the district, and it's $1,000 a month savings at the cage for the LED lights, which in turn we can save that and switch over all the buildings, which would be about a $5,000 to $6,000 a month savings of LED lights in all the buildings a year. So that was a big one. They hired Gene Richards into the maintenance department to take care of the smaller jobs. Don't let the little boys take care of the bigger ones, door handles, faucets, what have you. And we're looking at getting a new security system, correct? Where Sonatrol, we're having issues with them, so looking
The
at
alarms, yeah.
And another big one, RC is switching from waste management to a local garbage company. Because waste management charges us regardless if we're in school, the dumpster's empty or not. They pick up and we get charged, so that's going to be a $200+ savings a month.
Was that,
And they're red.
And the red.
And they're gonna put
They're
dragons on
gonna
it.
have a dragon on it.
They're gonna have a dragon on it.
Yeah.
was that something that we'd all went on our own, or was that still a countywide thing through the ISD, the trash pickup?
We were on our own.
You were on your own? Okay.
And one of the nice things about this company is it's a local Swift Creek company, and they're veterans who own the company, and they ordered all of the red dumpsters, and so we're really excited.
They spent $60,000 in
They're
dumpsters.
upstairs.
Wow.
I'd like to mention that RC told us, this is another good move of RC's, that during the Christmas break, when them dumpsters are empty, Waste Management or whoever we have comes in and empties them anyways. So he called, talked to the person in charge, tried to tell them don't pick them up. And they said, we can't do that. We've got a schedule and we can't change the schedule. So they emptied dumpsters, and that's what led him to look in.
Wow.
Didn't
To
take
save
him very
them
long
money.
to make that move, did it?
Nope.
And we get charged every time they don't. And
That's
they're-
crazy.
Another positive to that, I believe we were not recycling with waste management.
Oh, that's right.
We will be with this new company, so.
Paper and
They won the
plastic.
battle, but they lost the war.
So we're going to have start a recycling program.
Yes, I'm very excited about the recycling.
Empty dumpster.
You are, aren't you?
And one thing I'd like to comment, I'm glad to see we hired Gene, because that has been a very, very loyal individual. I met Gene when he was driving bus, and he took us to lacrosse games. Very nice man, great to the kids and everything else. And he was one of those that literally sucked it up, went to DM Burr, and still stayed here and drove a bus. I mean, he was loyal to the district, so I'm glad we hired him.
Me too. He's a good, very good employee.
He's been very loyal.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Except we're done with you.
Meeting was adjourned at 10, and we'll meet again this Monday.
Looks like we're done with
Thank you. Thank you.
He's a funny president, isn't he? He's funny.
He's funny.
Number 7, yeah. Angle.
You know,
7, informational items. I don't believe we had any questions, did we? I mean, it seemed like all the questions we had, the public you answered them yesterday in the meeting. B, this is information on employment of non-certified staff. Any questions on that? And then payment of bills. Mr. Ahern's been pretty thorough with Sharp Eye,
yeah.
along with Stacy. Sharp Eye on the payment of bills.
She's like, what?
Is it CCP or CCG?
If there's no questions, we'll move
Good
along
call.
to
Good call.
8, board discussion items.
First discussion item is the GISD has their annual budget hearing, and we need to have a representative to go to that.
He goes, no.
Everybody looks
Don't we always
Mr.
give it
Jones.
to the new guy?
That's
I wish you knew
Two guys, because we need an alternate, so, you know,
Okay.
Tony.
We know who we don't want to have go.
That'd be Mr. Engel.
That was
That's
Mr.
right.
Engel.
Tony, do you volunteer for
I
that?
volunteer.
We don't
All
want to.
right.
Very
What about you,
nice.
Tony?
It is
They like to leave
Wednesday.
everyone in suspense, Tony.
It's at 5 p.m. Wednesday, March 28th. And it's at the GISD.
If you flip
No,
that
it's at the
agenda
Career
over,
Center.
Oh,
Tony.
What?
It's at the Career
Center on Torrey Road.
That's my wife's birthday. I
The
can't
old
make that
skills
day.
center.
My birthday's the
You
day
see
after.
the,
If you give
see
me a
under
present.
It's on the
9,
resolution.
Oh, you're
Well,
right. I'm so
information's
sorry.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, it says Genesee, I don't know.
It's at the Genesee Career Institute.
And there's an address of 5081 Torrey Road.
Got it.
I'm sorry, I don't see that on here, but it must be on
It's on the
something.
resolution.
Okay,
No, it's all right.
forget it.
Leave them in suspense.
Are we
Just
complete
try to find it, that's what I had to do.
moving on to B, 8B.
All right. On the agenda, I realize that it's pretty poor English to say planning in twice in a 4-word sentence.
Redundant, yes.
However, it is planning of the strategic planning workshop. So we have had discussions. I still have a couple board members that I have to have the values discussion with as busy as it's been the last couple weeks. I haven't touched base. But I'd like to start looking at our calendars and seeing if we can start narrowing in on a time where we could do some of the strategic planning and have the conversation about values. The purpose of this workshop would be to try to coalesce around a few values. I'm going to share with you the work that Rod and I have done with all the staff in terms of the values that they hold, and then find out from your perspective how we can bring some of those to light on a 1-page document. So we would be looking at setting some goals for human resources. We'd be looking at setting some goals for facilities, setting some goals for financial, curriculum and instruction, and then merging those with our values. And so that's a process that's going to take probably 2 to 3 hours to really look at that. And so I'd like to try and do that if possible during the day, but I know for some of you that doesn't work. I've talked with Carrie a little bit. I know your schedule sometimes is tied up, but if there's a day that would work for somebody to do that, it'd be nice to see if we could pull that together. If not, we could schedule an evening meeting to do it. But
So are you talking sometime within the next month, 30 days?
I'd like to do it within the next month if possible. The initial goal was February, and I don't want it to get away from us too much. So
The next month or so. you're
would the
saying.
best thing be for you to think about it and me to send out a proposal of a few dates, and then you can respond directly to me?
Or to Joan, if she's still here.
Yeah, Joan's going to be here.
Sure. I have my
Yes.
calendar here, it doesn't
I
matter to
would
me.
just, I think for the most of us, it's gonna need to be in the evening though.
Ideally for
I
me.
mean,
I'm available day or night, so it's
Yeah, I can just move people, so.
flexible.
I'm good during spring break.
Okay.
If you're determined to do it during the day,
Mm.
that week there, but I mean, I don't think that fits these two schedules, so we're still back to the same
I
scenario.
could do Monday, the day after.
Yeah, you could do
April
Monday.
2nd.
That might work
It's a
for me as well
holiday
too. I'm off
thing.
on Monday after
Oh,
Easter.
what's
Okay,
that
so it's
date?
Monday.
I think the second,
April.
The 2nd.
Monday
Second
the
of April?
2nd?
well, tentatively, but
Sunday
yeah.
is Easter.
Easter, April 1st.
I don't
Okay.
have, I don't want that either,
It's
so.
April 5th.
Okay. Calendar, and then I'll send a confirmation.
We're off then, right? The kids are
We're off that weekend.
Oh, okay, yep, okay.
So we're looking at a morning session then?
Yes.
Be nice to do a morning session. That way, people are fresh.
Yeah.
It's difficult sometimes in the evening to around some of that.
I think that we have finance and or building and site on the 2nd, 8 and 9 o'clock.
Finance at
Yeah.
8
Could be-
and building and
Don't-
site at 9.
don't- Wasn't
We
it
were
the 2nd?
gonna reschedule those on Monday because that's holidays for Maryland. And actually, it's a holiday for me. Maryland has the whole week off, I believe. But Monday's a holiday for us as well. Friday, Good Friday, and Monday after Easter.
Yeah, I'm fine meeting on that day, but we can talk.
I'm
about,
fine.
We can talk about that.
I
if
think
we
I'm
wanna
fine,
move it.
we might as
I
well
can
just,
come in
are you guys good?
if Maryland wants me.
Okay.
So we look
Second
at
of April.
9 in the
For
morning?
the,
Yeah, let me get some confirmation on the
To go vote
calendar.
for
It's just
something
helpful to know that you're off or
Yeah.
we're off.
Well, I think apparently everybody's on.
Mm-hmm.
They already did?
Yeah.
Good job.
So before I move off of that, this is I do come bearing gifts. This is some preparation for that. This is a book. There's not pictures in it. I'm sorry.
Gotta read it.
There's a picture on the front.
This is Yellow Brick Road, Ken.
So anyway,
Oh,
We're in a
crap.
book club now, right?
yeah, you're in a book club. So this is an interesting book, and the reason that I like this book is because when we were going around and doing the values activity, and you probably read the article that I did in the View, one of the values that I think is coming back over and over again, and we're having these conversations, and we know that we have a long way to go in a lot of areas. But we keep talking about what does it mean to be excellent, and so this value of excellence and trying to strive to be the best you can at everything that you do, and this impacts a lot of areas of our organization. So this is a really neat story about a superintendent in a school district that experienced some pretty neat things and where they came from. So something that we can have some discussions about in the future, and maybe even talk a little bit about on April 2nd. If you can't read it all by then, I'll have the cliff notes prepared for you.
Do we have audio books for this?
So I do not have an audio book for it. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
yep. I had a conversation with, and for board member, I had the conversation with, but they had just suggested that we might talk about a policy for board members to, and I know that I speak to each of you. I know Ken and Tony and Brian and Stacy in particular. You've all gone to MASB workshops, and they have. That was you. Okay,
It
good.
was me.
So they offer the courses, the leveled courses, and being able to attend those workshops can be very helpful for your own professional development. So the conversation was just, do you want to think about a policy that would say, board members will attend, the first 2 levels or the first 2 classes or something like that to get a baseline of understanding. I know I talked with Tony a little bit about that as well as a new board member. So just wanted to put that out there for you to talk about. I think, Stacy, you were the one
Yeah,
that brought that
they
up, so.
talked about it at the conference. I don't know if you remember that it's a great thing to do. Put it in there, and it at least gets you, knowing what you're doing as you first come on, because it's very helpful. Like your one-on-one class, like where you're not like, wow, it's really helpful.
I would agree with you.
I think we should. We owe it to people to know.
Well, to get certified, it takes the first 9
Correct.
classes.
But this
I've
one
taken
didn't.
7 of them. I haven't been able to get the last 2 because every time they come up, they don't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with having a policy that you've got to get certified in the 100 course. I'm not real excited about having to go to 2. I've been to some of the 2 and 3 classes also, and I don't mind getting certified.
I think it should be suggested, but you're creating a policy that you're never going to enforce. Because number one, what are you going to do to the board member if they don't do it?
Well,
So
and
it's
that
a
was
mere,
the
it's a mere suggestion that you do 1 through 9. So, why don't, I think between us talking to one another and the superintendent talking to new board members, and I mean, right now, if I was sitting in Tony's shoes, while you'd like to see him go do it, I don't know how much of my energy and time I would put into it, because if he puts energy into it and then he doesn't get reelected, why did he waste his time for this 9-month cycle? So, if you're going to put this there and then you're going to put a timeline in there, are you going to give someone 4 years to do it when their term's up, or are you going to give them a year to do it? You're creating a policy. There's no enforcement with it, so why create it? Just have it as a suggestion that, look, and I do think it's beneficial. I took 1 through 9. I think it's a great idea, but to create a policy that you're going to enforce, that's a waste of paper. Just my opinion.
I agree. I think, the enforcement part would be a problem, but it certainly would be preferred to take those 100 level classes.
It's a great suggestion, and I think if we communicate that to whoever's new, I think they should. But where does Mike fall into this? How many? I mean, like when Lorraine and I got in here, I think we knocked the first 9 out in about 6 months.
Yeah.
Mike's been here 2 years, 3 years.
I'm in my 4th year.
Okay, 4th year, and he's still sitting at 7. So I mean, it sounds really good in theory, but in reality, it's a joke.
It just was in the class suggested because most of the school districts are doing that. So then that at least they're all certified 1 through the 100s. That's all. I mean, that's just not really that hard to get. You don't have to put a timeline in there, but you should want to do that when you're serving your community and sitting at a board table, as far as I feel.
Is it certified per class or per session, or do you have to complete all 9 to get certified?
You have to complete all 9. Well, you get you sign and you get a certificate for each class you take, but then it says that you've done your 100s. Like Brian has done. I think you've done everything.
No, I've done a lot though.
They're generally like if you get them around here, there's some around here locally over in Lansing, and it's easy to get to, except.
And you can do a lot of them at the
during the week.
conference.
You
Like
can do
you
them
kick them
online.
right out at the
You can also
conference
do them
and
online.
online.
You can do them online.
Yeah, some of them.
Yeah. It's just important, I think, to get the 100.
Yeah.
That was just my suggestion.
No, I agree. I think the 100.
And
They're
you don't have to
very
put in
helpful.
there you have to do it in 6 months. It's just that as a board member, while you're on the table for now it's 4 years instead of 6. It would be very important to at least have that knowledge. I think that's important to sit here and have that knowledge.
So, are you suggesting that we entertain a policy that we would make the suggestion or the preferred, you know, the
That's a better
preferred
way to put it.
path would be that you get certified in all the level 1?
Yeah.
And you don't have to say a timeline. It's just important to try to at least the 100s. I mean, you've done it.
I would encourage someone to do it within the first 6 months to a year.
But
I would say the
remember,
first 12
I
months.
mean, yeah, because if you do it at the end of year 4 and you don't run for re-election or you don't get re-elected, well, that was a waste.
well,
I
and
mean-
remember what we talked about. I didn't know until I went to the class that if you win in November, you are sworn in, and then you literally can start in November and take classes before you come on
But
in
you're not sworn
January.
in. You're not sworn in until January 1st.
They are they not sworn in
No,
November?
They're elected, but they're not sworn in.
Oh, I thought we sworn to. Okay,
No.
all right.
So that's the other proverbial fly in the
Okay,
ointment,
that's true. Okay,
is if someone was elected in November, you could have them scheduled to go.
I know. Oh, wait, they did say you could. That's what it was. You can take those classes
Yes.
even before you're sworn in. That's what it is. So I mean, they have that time from November
So
to January to start.
we would be better off to create a policy that we would pay for someone to go that wasn't a sworn-in board member.
Yes, we
to
could
give
write
an
it that
incentive.
way.
Because right
That's
now,
what it was.
you can't, the
It's been a
district
long
can't
time.
financially send someone that's not a board member,
Mhm.
because you're not a board member.
Right.
So if you want to create a policy, let's create a policy that we'll talk in the future.
Yeah.
Tony gets reelected, so, but if he hadn't been appointed, well, someone's going to fill my seat.
Right.
So someone's going to get elected to sit here. Well, you can't go to any classes until you've been sworn in. Well, that's
Right,
January.
crazy.
So that might be a better thing if we can give the incentive for the newly elected person
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
But again, your problem with that is that's usually the first week in November or the first week of
First
October,
months you got.
and you haven't had an election yet. Because your election's going to be the first
November
Tuesday in
3rd.
November.
November 3rd, yeah.
So, you're just missing that all the way around. It's great in theory, but in reality, it's,
Well, I could work on some mock language
Doesn't hurt.
that encompasses the conversation here.
Did I
and
say
then-
who did the class? Maybe that guy could give a little. Can't remember.
I'd probably
Just-
put something together
Yeah.
that encompasses the conversation I'm hearing, and then you can look at it at our next board
I just
meeting.
think the 100s are important.
So for me personally, I have indicated that I do want to pursue it, at the right juncture, so it's definitely on my to-do list.
Great.
Tony, I brought some papers for you today,
Okay.
and I just happened to bring
Oh, I have all.
101,
101.
Introduction
me
to School Board
afterwards.
Service, which I'm going to loan to you.
Tony,
Okay.
I think I can do him one better.
So,
I think all of
after
mine
you-
are sitting in a three-ring
After you get done
binder.
reading this book, you can read the,
You
give
want
it
to
to
say
you
it
after.
I'm
with
with Brian, you got it on audio? And, the long
I like how
That's
this
fine. You're thinking about it.
audio thing.
Tony, if I think about it, they're all in a three-ring binder. I'll bring them to you and have them.
I appreciate that.
You can not even go to the class. You
You
can
can
just sit
order
home and
some
read.
language.
Well, and you
I'll
can
put
do them
some
along with the new
online.
book.
Some of them if you can't go, but like when you went to 101, wasn't it awesome?
Yes.
Yeah, because you walked out and you're like, wow. It just puts a perspective, Wow.
Any other questions? Any other questions on this policy? No. So then we'll move forward to 8D.
Just wanted to get any other feedback, conversation from the facility study meeting yesterday. I think one of the conversations that was brought up by people who attended the meeting was, to essentially to put forward a bond in November. And that is something that we haven't really had discussion about as a board. I know we've had a facility study, but that's not a bond project. That's simply, to tell us what is recommended in the study. So, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of debrief on that, talk about that, see where you're at as a board. If that's a direction that you are going to want to go, I'm going to need to be advised because there are deadlines that have to be met. There's some paperwork that is somewhat extensive that has to be completed. and that would need to be done by early May, end of April, quite frankly. So I want to start that conversation. I'm not sure where each of you are at, or if you're in different places. I just need I'll need some direction at some point in the not too distant future about that.
I think from last night, even from that lady that was so excited, wasn't she great? I just think it's the time to do it, especially with the security and things going on, and we really need to upgrade our stuff.
There's a lot of work to do when it comes to
Very much.
a bond, with the community, and putting a community together, and all the other, and making sure all the deadlines are met, and all the literature, and the informing and the awareness. But I'm for it. We haven't had a bond here about 40 years now. I mean, we've had bail bonds, but we haven't had a bond in about 40 years now.
And you're not asking for an astronomical amount like they did before. So
We set a bond back in what, 08, didn't we?
07, it was
Okay.
79
I don't have my
million.
papers with
And
me.
that's
What did we
a
say it
20,
was?
let's back up, because I'm not being negative about it, and you guys do as you wish. But one, you better be very forthcoming with what you're gonna put on it, that you can sell it to the public. Two, you better get the public's view on an opinion before you put it on there, because I'm gonna tell you right now, while you had a handful of people at a meeting that thought it was a great idea, you got a bunch of people in the public that are still angry about the last one, including me.
And that was 07.
And the board at that time, in my opinion, and just my opinion, was very misleading. And we have a 20-year bond, and we're sitting here broke every year to fix the facilities. And if you go back and read that bond, it was exactly that, to upgrade and maintain facilities. Instead, we built a $13.2 million building over there that has sucked it dry. So if you come out with it, you better come out and be very forthcoming and very honest. So if you want to upgrade security, that's what it's going to be used for, and only that. And I would have it dollar for dollar what each building's going to cost, and this is what your money's going to go to. Because I don't think we can sit here and all sugarcoat everything. I'm not. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but you better be honest when you come out with it.
I'd like to speak to that. If you look at that facility studies, there's costs in there, right at the back of each school section. There's a section on bringing the schools up, the individual schools up to code, and there's a section on basically a wish list, which includes security. It's there, and it's going to cost, according to the meeting last night, about $42 million. Is that what we're looking at?
46 to 48.
And I want to make a statement to this board. In the past, I've been against increased taxes, millages, but I will not sit here and say, no, we shouldn't go this year for a millage, because I'm going to sit here and say, we have to go for a millage. If you look at we all know what's happening in this country. We know that there's a big push on this security, and it needs to be. Every one of our schools, we need a double entry. We need the money. We can't do that with the money we have. We can't bring our security up to where it should be without a millage. And I support the millage 200%. I do not want to be sitting here when we have something drastic happen and say, we held back because we didn't think this was a year to do it. This is a year to do it. If the public doesn't want to support it, if they don't want to give us the money, so be it. I am not going to be here. I'm not going to sit here and have someone say that you didn't do your job when we know that this is a very serious matter. I live on a fixed income. Do I want an increase? One side of me, of course I don't, because of what it costs. But I don't think we can't. I think we're going to be remiss if we don't, and I think this is the year to do it.
Well said, Mike.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
I don't think we'd be doing it.
I would agree. I totally agree with you, Mike, if you make the bond a security bond. If you make it building upgrades and you paint it with a broad brush, at 42 million, it's not gonna cost 42 million to upgrade securities in this district. That whole 42 million is many, many other things. So if you wanna do the security end of it, 100% agree with you. But if you paint it with a broad brush, I'm gonna tell you what, the people in this community, I don't think have forgotten. So if you go with a security bond, I don't think your bond will pass in a minute. I don't think anybody would vote no.
Well, last night it was presented that way.
It was all laid
very
out.
much.
It's
It's all laid
it's all
out.
laid out.
But there's
No brainer.
isn't there more in there that has more to do with security than that 42 million?
No, but the book's open to public. Anyone can come look at it. Ben presented. He presented everything last night.
I understand that, and I think if you try to put everything out there, I think your bond will fail.
Well, and Carrie, I mean, granted, there was a lot of people, but it's not the community. But Carrie even said, could I just have a hand raise of anyone in the entire room after listening to Ben raise their hand? So if we can, Ben is very good at his communication and getting it out there, and he is getting trust in these people. You know, you've seen that. If we can get that out there, walk door to door, we owe that to the public to get the information out and do it right, because we can't say no. I have a daughter in school.
As a new guy, just seeing the study for an hour and 30 minutes, to me, it's not a question of if, it's a question of grandkids. It's a place they want to.
And I understand what you're saying. I don't want to undermine that, but it's just our job to get out there and speak this.
Well, I agree, but what is the bond going to be?
Well, that's a part of the problem.
Because in 2007, that's what that bond read. Go back and read it.
It's gonna be to upcode every building, all 7
We
buildings.
have to.
It isn't just for one, it isn't just for a new high school.
No, that's
It's
what you
just
said
what
last
that
night.
facility study is. It's for every one of them.
And I give you my impression on that as well too. Again, looking at the plans that each building had, and hearing about this need to redo the buildings, I was expecting that those buildings are going to be raised and walls come down. In my opinion, it shows a lot of restraint on spending, because it was not touching major portions of every building. To me, that was just the tip of the iceberg in what the study showed that we were going to do per building. So the $48 million to me shows that there is some thought behind it. So again, I don't see how we can say we shouldn't do it. It's just a matter of
And it was
when.
transparent as can be, and that has been our biggest problem in the past. And it
And
was
it's-
so transparent. People were, you have to be that way.
And I agree that language should be articulated exactly what we're gonna do. What we're asking for is what we do with that money.
I agree.
I think it's going to be critical, and Ken brought this up. Whatever we say we're going to do and we're going to go for needs to be what happens.
Absolutely.
We can't ask our community to.
If you read the language from the last bond, and you can go dig it up and pull it, if you'd like, because I'd like to have my memory refreshed. But there's about that much reading in it. And in the middle of it, there's a line in there that says new structures.
Do you have it there?
I don't know.
And if you read that, if you read it, man, it's a big dissertation on keeping the buildings up. That no one wanted to pay to have a new high school. No one wanted to pay to have a new auditorium, and it spells it out. You can go back and read the newspaper articles. Again, it spells it out. And there was two words in there. It included new structures, and it was very calculated. It was very thought out, and it was very manipulative. Because the very first thing that was done is it passed in 2007, and in 2011 you had everything in place to build the PAC. That was a very calculated thing. So all I'm saying to you is, while you've got a handful of concerned parents there, just like me, yes, I'd like to. We discussed it before we went on camera about upgrading things. I'm in total agreement with that. What I'm saying to you is, whatever you ask the public for, you better guarantee it, and be realistic, because there are people out there that aren't going to forget that. And if you read that language is exactly what you're going to ask for now, except now you're going to present it in a study form. That we need $42 million for this. If you read that language, that's exactly what that millage was passed for in 2007.
Rod, do you have any?
The bond or the sinking fund?
The sinking fund.
Because the bonds have all failed.
The bonds have all failed. The sinking fund is what we use to build the PAC.
Right. Right, I'm just,
Correct.
I thought I heard you say a
Yeah, I
bond
thought you
pass,
were
I was
talking bond
confused.
also.
I apologize if I misspoke that. When we voted on that sinking fund for the 20 years, go back and read it. And everything that you're going to ask for now is what that guaranteed in new structures. So
And he explained that last
I
night.
caution
saying-
you very, very much when you go back. And that's why I say, I think if you're worried about security, I would go with a security bond. That'll pass in a minute. Nobody's gonna vote no. If you go for thinking you're gonna redo this entire district, I think you will meet a lot of resistance.
We're just gonna put it up to code, it has to be up to code.
I've got the language, but it was 03, and this is about the bond, so what didn't pass, so.
Right, yeah, those were new structures for the high school, and then the first one was the high school, and then the next one was high school and/or auditorium.
So what does it look like for us to go around and go to, like, what do you do? Like, do you go door to door? Do you go to the senior centers? What do we do as board
Well,
members? What do we?
No, the first step is as a board to take a vote and
Sure.
decide if what you're gonna put forward and what we would do. So this is kind of the first conversation about that. The door-to-door stuff doesn't really happen until probably the fall, but
Right, I was
there's
just seeing what it looks
deadlines
like.
that have to be filed and those types of things. So the first step would be to kind of boil it down to the number, and I think that's kind of part of the conversation, and then decide if there's support to do it. Then you need to take a vote.
The paperwork has to be in the state by May.
By early May, yeah.
Do you know the exact date?
We can find that out.
We're only talking March, April.
2 months.
We're talking 60 days. I think we should have a committee to meet soon to put something together, put it together, put it on paper, be specific like Ken is saying, and get moving. I don't think we should wait.
I think the committee that you're speaking of should be a subcommittee of this board, not necessarily we're not talking about a bond committee, which is
No.
beyond the board, just people from this board.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what I meant.
Okay. Yep. I can do that.
Like I say, I think your safety one will pass with flying colors. And maybe that's something you explore when you look at it, and when you have your committee, do you want to do 2 separate ones? Because if you do one and it fails, you have nothing. If you have one fail, but you have the safety one pass, at least you can upgrade the buildings and have a safer school district.
But isn't there some stuff that has to be done besides the security that was not up to code? We have some things we have to.
That's the debatable factor. At what level do people want to be? I mean, I think the study, the initial bond of $70-some million, now with inflation, what we're asking for is half, and that was for really one building. But because the study does not build new structures, it does have some additions to some spaces. You're able to do things like parking lots and those types of things, which are very desperately needed. However, to speak to Mr. Engel's point, not every single thing in that study is strictly security. A large portion of it is for that purpose. But I think the additional monies that would bring the buildings in the district up to an acceptable level for 2018, I think that's the conversation that, the committee that comes together to pull this together will have to make that decision.
Yes. Last night you mentioned 3 things: security, competitiveness, and what was the third?
Code.
Oh, I have
Code.
it. I do have my book here if you need it.
So, but I guess the point, it sounds like we have a committee that we need to convene to talk about, and then, we'll make that available, public meeting so that we can have that conversation.
And if you have that many things waiting for code, you're better prepared to bring them up to code one way or the other. I mean, if that's the case, so,
Yep.
I wouldn't sit back and put my eggs in the basket that something's gonna happen. You might have plan A and plan B. Plan B gives you a bond, and plan B doesn't.
So you're gonna work at putting that committee together.
Yep.
Any other thoughts, questions, discussion on this? Okay, 9A. We need a motion.
Nope.
What's that?
What?
We need a motion.
You said
So
no?
moved.
Did you say no?
Did you say no?
I didn't say anything.
Oh,
I thought
I
I
thought
heard
you said no. We're like,
No, I didn't say a word.
He doesn't want to. Are you saying you want to go to that?
Nope.
Support.
No, I am saying no to that.
Mike, Tony Paul.
you did say
Mike,
something.
motion, Tony,
You didn't
support.
say anything. Oh my God.
So we understand the conversation here? Okay, so Tony, are you able to do this or not?
I am.
Okay. What about you, Tony? In
He's
case-
going, right?
I'm going.
Well,
Yeah, I'm good.
okay.
Just in case.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You're a
So-
second, so you better hope this movie don't end like Grease, because you're gonna be driving.
So be a result that Swartz Creek Community School Board of Education appoint Tony Jones as their delegate and Tony Paul as their alternate to attend the 2018-19 annual budget meeting of the Genesee Intermediate School District at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March 28, 2018 at the Genesee Career Institute, 5081 Torrey Road, Flint, Michigan, 48507. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Comments, public? Public comments? Really not public,
Just up
you-
there smiling pretty.
You can pretend.
Okay, number 11, comments and questions from the board.
I think last night's study was great. And Mike, I could have applauded you just now. I agree with you 100% what you said.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
And Tony,
I agree with,
it's great to have you.
I agree with Mike. I think we,
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
have full support on that.
we
Yeah.
have to.
We have to.
Remind me.
Yep.
Not now when.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Any other discussion, comments from the board? Okay, number 12, closed session. We need to have a motion to go into closed session.
Support.
Okay, Stacy and Mike. Be resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education go into closed session for purposes of considering a complaint against an employee and for strategy related to negotiations, and adding to that discussion of emergency safety plan.
You need to do a roll call vote.
Roll call, please.
Mike? Ken?
Yes.
Grace not here. Stacy?
Yes.
Tony Jones?
Yes.
Tony Paul?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes. Motion is carried.
Let's, why don't we take a 5-minute break and come back?
I didn't want to break it.
It's not a 20-ounce hammer, is it? Beautiful mahogany piece of furniture.
I think I am.
So, do you feel like you're
We have a motion.
Hey, MC Hammer, put it down, man.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're back in open session.
He's
Thanks,
so
Ken.
bossy.
Any other
Hang on,
comments?
this is for me.
Any other comments?
Oh my
Yeah, I got to make a motion, we adjourn.
Please, I'm
Second.
hungry.
We got the motion, we got the second. We are adjourned.
All right.
It's 9:32.
You are too loud with
Good
this.
job.